After finishing second to eventual Minto Cup champions Whitby in both 1984 and 1985, the 1986 version of this year's inductees in the team section were a talented and determined group, one poised for greatness. And it was greatness they achieved, going undefeated in both OLA League and playoff competition over the next 2 seasons and winning 3 Minto Cups in the next 4 years. Their remarkable run began in 1986 as they finished the regular season with a perfect 20-0 record, finishing 16 points ahead of second place St. Catharines and scoring over 200 more goals than they allowed. Individually, they held the top 4 spots in league scoring, with Jamie Batley leading the way with 132 points in 20 games. And their defense allowed 65 less goals than their nearest competitor. The OLA playoffs saw more of the same as they swept Etobicoke and St. Catharines to reach the Minto Cup finals. Although they went 1-3 in the round-robin portion of the competition with the Coquitlam Adanacs and Victoria Esquimalt Legion, they captured their first Minto Cup and their city's first since 1983 by defeating Victoria 11-7 in the final game. 1987 was virtually a carbon copy of their previous campaign, as they again were undefeated in league play, this time finishing 14 points clear of second place St. Catharines. Statistically, they were even more dominant than in the 86 season, scoring 454 goals, 305 more than they allowed, and 54 more than their closest rival, Brampton. The 149 goals they allowed was 78 less than the next stingiest club, St. Catharines. Jamie Batley again ran away with the scoring race, his 167 points putting him 39 ahead of the runner-up, teammate Joey Hiltz. It was after their second consecutive Minto Cup after again sweeping their OLA playoff rivals, Brampton and St. Catharines, and this time they won 3 of 4 round-robin games before again knocking off Western representative Victoria for their second national title. The 1988 regular season went pretty much according to the blueprint established over the previous 2 seasons. Although they did actually lose the game, they scored 405 goals and allowed only 152 en route to an 11-point cushion over, you guessed it, St. Catharines. They again swept their playoff competition, Bay Area and Whitby, before stumbling to a 1-3 record at the Minto Cup, good for only a disappointing third-place finish behind Coquitlam and eventual champions Victoria. 1989 saw a much more competitive OLA regular season. Our inductee, however, secured a 4th consecutive league title, albeit by a scant 3-point margin over the Athletics, before entering postseason play. They swept 4th place Brampton before facing their perennial rivals St. Catharines in the OLA Championship Series. After a hard-fought 7-game series, our inductee was off to Minto Cup number 4 with the goal of erasing the memories of the previous season. That they did, defeating BC Junior A League champion Richmond 4-1 to once again be crowned, for the 3rd time in 4 years, Minto Cup champions. Truly one of the great Junior A teams ever assembled. They won 88 of 93 league games, scoring 1,510 goals and allowing only 611, an average score of 16-6. They won 32 of 35 OLA playoff games over the same period, resulting in 4 consecutive OLA titles and, of course, 3 Minto Cup championships. Winners of 90% of the games they played, they are your 2017 inductee in the team category. They are the 1986 to 1989 Peterborough Maulers. I'd like to ask Dean McLeod, Commissioner of the Ontario Junior A League, who incidentally was Commissioner of the Ontario Junior A League when the Maulers won their 3 out of 4 years Minto Cup, which is somewhat frightening. I'd like to ask Dean to come up and accept on behalf of the Maulers. Dean?
Well, thank you very much, Dave. And I had a phone call from Dave Lancaster, I guess an email, Dave, seeing that nobody from Peterborough was going to be here to accept this, and asked if I wouldn't say a few words. And I don't know what I got myself into here. But in any case, this was a marvelous lacrosse team. And the 86 team probably was their best team of the 4, and unfortunately for them, they lost in Esquimalt. And part of that reason, or the reason I feel, is Cochran and I had the World Junior U19 Field Championships in Australia that year, and 5 of the Maulers were on that team, and the way they played in the Middle Cup was really embarrassing to the talent that they had. We felt the trip was over. They had their trip to Australia, and they just didn't respond, and rightfully so. They got beat, and they got beat by Esquimalt. But this team and Dave Evans has stolen all my thunder that I was going to state about the Maulers. I thought they were undefeated in one of the Middle Cups, but I got the pleasure of sitting with Randy Bryan and JJ over here, and they informed me, and I checked the WOMP's Bible of Lacrosse, and sure enough, in 1974, they had an undefeated season, including the Middle Cup, and that's the only one since. So again, you guys, congratulations, and you really should have got JJ up here because he's a comedy act. But I want to tell you a story about JJ. I managed the Brampton Juniors in the full 70s, and Bob Cleveley, one of the inductees, was one of my goalkeepers with Mac Maud, who eventually came out to Nanaimo. And we were playing Peterborough in Brampton one night, and I don't know what the score was. It was probably lopsided, but we were up 5-3 in men. Peterborough was 3 men. No timeouts back then, no restriction line. You can't go back over, you know, the way lacrosse used to be played. No 30-second clock. JJ's got the ball over near the penalty box, and I can see it like it was yesterday. And all of a sudden he stops and he says, "Ref, I need a timeout." And there was no timeouts. So here's Art Webster and Dave Wilfong checking him. So these two clowns, they release, take it easy. JJ puts a stick in the ground, goes down and says, "My shoelace is undone." So he goes down, makes out he's doing his shoelace. Soon as these guys ease up, JJ picks a stick up, whips between them, goes in and scores on Cleveley or Smeltzer or one of them. But just shaking my head. But that's the kind of lacrosse talent. Peterborough is probably the greatest lacrosse factory of lacrosse players. And back in those days, I think, if I'm not mistaken, probably about 40,000 people lived in Peterborough. It's maybe only 65 or 70 now, but the lacrosse teams that they've produced and the 4-year record that they've got, and like Dave said, 1,510 goals and 611 against. That's about 2.5 goals for every one you give up, and just unbelievable. And I congratulate them. It's my pleasure as the commissioner back then, and to accept this, and it will get back to Peterborough, and I'm sure that it will show up in the Hall of Fame in the Peterborough Memorial Center. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much, and Dave and Tony, thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Now, I know that story wasn't 100% true, because as everybody in this room knows, that Dave Wilfong never ever checked anybody. Sorry, Fong, but Dean made it so easy.